Hello, friends, it's Mr. Jim, and welcome back to Kids Animal Stories. Today, we are starting a spooky adventure. Well, not really a spooky adventure. Well, this creature has a very spooky sounding name. Very fitting for a weekend like this. Are you guys ready to learn about a ginormous salamander called a Hellbender? What is going to happen with Blake? Me too. Let's go.
My name is Blake, and this is my story of when I almost saw the end.
That is the voice of Blake the Hellbender. Wait a second. What is a Hellbender?
That sounds very scary.
Well, actually, he's just a salamander. Like a really big one. Have you ever seen a salamander before? Yeah, they kind of look like a little slimy lizard. They usually live under logs and in very moist and wet places. Well, Blake and all Hellbenders are very different. They don't live under logs. They live in rivers. And they actually live underneath of a rock. I know that doesn't sound like a very comfortable home, but they actually love it. They love it so much that they pick their favorite rock, and they might stay underneath that rock for their entire life. Do you think a Hellbender, who's pretty big, he's about maybe as long as your arm. Wow, that's pretty big, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they live a long time? Do you think they live like 1 year, 10 years, or 50 years? Hellbenders are actually one of the oldest and longest living of all the salamanders. They can live 50 years. Holy smokes. So they find the most comfortable, I hope it's comfortable, but it's a rock. Well, they find the most comfortable of the rocks, and that is their home for a very long time. They don't really like to move around much. They've picked the best one, and that is where they stay. And that's where our story of Blake the Hellbender begins. He had lived under the same rock in a beautiful river for 15 years, and he loved it there. Do you know why he loved it so much? He loved it because it was a perfect spot where all of his delicious food would flow down the river. It's kind of like he lived in like a fast food rock, because he would just sit there and sometimes he'd open his mouth. Can you open your mouth really big as a Hellbender? And as crayfish and worms and small fish swim down the river, they swim right into his mouth.
And that is why I love my rock,
said Blake.
It is the best rock in the entire river. Not that I've seen many others, but back in the day, a long time ago, I did do a lot of research, and that is why I picked this rock.
There's a lot of factors that go into why they choose the spot that they're going to live. Do you know one thing that's really interesting about salamanders, and especially Blake the Hellbender? They breathe through their skin. Yeah. So what their surroundings that they're in, it's really important that it's very clean, because, you know, if they're in dirty water, it's hard for them to breathe. Or even worse, if they're in water that's like poisoned with toxins, that's very dangerous for them. So we call salamanders like Blake, they're called bioindicators. That means that if there's a whole bunch of salamanders around, that must mean the habitat is really healthy. But if the salamanders and Hellbenders start disappearing, then there must be a problem with how clean the environment is.
Yes, breathing is very important for all of us creatures, but especially us Hellbenders. And I can remember the day when Carl the catfish, he had some really bad gas, and yikes, that was a rough time of breathing the water. Carl's toots were the worst.
As Blake was moving around underneath his rock, it was time for him to get a little something to eat. He poked his head out from the rock and opened it up, and instantly,
Oh, what in the world is going on with the water today? It's terrible.
Blake pulled himself back underneath the rock. Something was not right with the water. He thought that maybe Carl had some more bad gas, but it was even worse.
There's no way that I'm going to go eat food out in that water. Something terrible must have died out there, and we'll just wait till tomorrow for it to pass on by. I'm going to sleep.
As Blake fell fast asleep, unfortunately the river got even dirtier. He woke up the next morning in a deep panic.
It's even terrible. I must get out of here.
As Blake pulled himself out from under the rock, he crawled on top of the rock out of the water so he could get a better view on what was going on.
Oh my goodness. Carl, that is not Carl the catfish. That is something even worse.
He took a look around at the water and he couldn't believe his eyes.
What in tarnation has happened here? Somebody has poisoned our river.
Oh no! The entire river has turned completely black. This river was once super clean, like you could see all the way to the bottom, but now as Blake scans his eyes all the way across the river, all he could see is black water. Something has gone terribly wrong, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens on the next episode of Kids Animal Stories. Great job, you listened all the way to the end, and who remembers how old a Hellbender can live? Is it 1, 10, or 50 years? Yes, 50 years. Holy smokes, they live a long time. And who remembers what they eat? Do they like hamburgers or crayfish? Crayfish! Yes, and worms and fish. They are very cool creatures, like a ginormous salamander who live deep in very clear, fast-moving rivers. Well, we'll see you on the next episode. Bye!